What do I need to be good at to be great at something?
Hello, everyone. You are listening to She Leads with Carly. And in this show, we talk to the absolute best, brightest, and yes, badass leaders.
Tap into where your natural curiosity takes you. Just making sure you're not your own roadblock. Even if you do fall, you're going to fall and you're going to learn.
Together, let's build a DNA of what it takes to rise to the top and truly make an impact. I'm your host, Carly Malatsky. I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Alex Nagourney. Alex is currently the Vice President of Growth and E-commerce at Perelel Health, a women's health company that provides targeted vitamin routines for each unique stage of a woman's hormonal life cycle, with a focus on pre- and postnatal health. Before Perelel, Alex worked in strategy in the podcast vertical at Spotify, consulted in strategy for the Walt Disney Co, and also worked at Netflix for almost 4 years in marketing and content strategy. She also dove into the craziness that comes with joining a startup by leading the growth strategy at Quibi, a short-form streaming platform that generated content viewing on mobile devices. As you will hear, the Quibi experience differed quite drastically than what was anticipated. Before starting her 8+ year career in strategy and growth, Alex started off her professional career in finance and investment banking after receiving her bachelor's degree in physics and mathematics from Wellesley College. Alex, it is so great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. So first, set the scene. Where are you in the world? What are you up to? I see some pictures in the background, but tell me a little bit more.
I'm currently at my mom and stepdad's house, my childhood home in New Jersey. We are celebrating my stepbrother's wedding this weekend. So we're all back kind of preparing to celebrate.
Amazing. Okay, exciting. So that actually is a perfect segue to where I love starting, which is your childhood. Tell me about 5-year-old Alex. Who was she? What excited you? What did you want to be when you grew up? How were you thinking about things then?
I think first of all, I love starting with this question because I find that so many of my questions about myself come from better understanding my childhood and how I grew up and the environment that I was in. For me growing up, I think that I was just a kid that wanted to be a good girl. I don't know how many women maybe can relate to this, but I think so much of what I was trying to do was just be good, make my parents proud. I don't think I gave myself so much time to explore or mess up or do things wrong or make mistakes. And so a lot of it was I was the youngest in my family. I had an older brother and an older sister, and I kind of watched them make mistakes. I watched my parents get mad. And then I just tried to be on the good, right path. And then as I got older, I tried to kind of explore, figure out what could I do that would help make me successful or give me a stable life. But it wasn't always so much exploring what do I love and what do I want to do and what makes me really happy and energized.
No, it's something part of that I can definitely relate to. I don't know if my sisters will like that so much, but I'm also youngest of 3, and I saw the mistakes, you almost learn what not to do, what to do based on how your parents are responding to it. So it's pretty similar in that regard. And so, Alex, I know you chose to go to Wellesley College, which is an all-girls college, which is definitely unique in some regard. Take me through that process. Was that something in the family? Your parents were saying this is a great college. How were you thinking through that process?
Yeah, it was definitely a specific choice to attend an all-women's college. And it's a sacrifice, I think, to not go to a co-ed school. So when I was looking at schools, I looked everywhere. I looked at co-ed schools. And Wellesley was the only all-women's college that I even looked at. I went to a public school my entire life, my whole upbringing. So obviously co-ed. And I really enjoyed that experience. It was really small, and I'm from a really kind of a town with a lot of camaraderie. So it was really cool to play sports and see everyone And when I started looking at colleges, I was looking to kind of obviously push myself and challenge myself to go to the best school I could go to. But there was something specific about Wellesley College. And actually it was my mom that encouraged me to even look or consider Wellesley and an all-women's school, fully to her credit. And when we visited the campus, there was something so, so special about almost like blocking yourself off from the world in a way. Like it is a very, in a way, isolating environment. Like it's not the real world. You're in this single sex environment, and that's very different from how the rest of the world operates. And so there was something very special. Like there was all women walking around the campus, all of the, well, at the time, not so much anymore, but at the time, like all the bathrooms were all women. The president of the college government is always going to be a woman. The president of the physics society is always going to be a woman. So there was something like so special about just women being together on campus and kind of not being distracted by like external societal factors. The women were just there to learn and study and form amazing, lifelong, deep relationships. And that was really, really exciting to me to say like, okay, I've done the 4 years of sports and co-ed and public school. Maybe I can try like this very unique experience where I can just focus on myself and my studies. And after trying to be that like good girl for so long, maybe I can just take some time to figure out like who I am and what I really want to do and what I really want to study.
Wow. Yeah. It's super fascinating and interesting. And I'm curious, we'll talk about this because I think that transition from being at an all-girls college to now going into finance, which is, investment banking is the most probably male-dominated, stereotypical, environment. But even before then, I actually read somewhere that you didn't know what you wanted to go into and you almost tried different things. And one particular equation, if you will, got you excited about physics and kind of walk me through that process of how did you choose to be a physicist, like study physics and math at Wellesley?
Yeah. Well, I think it was actually a combination of my mom and my dad that helped encourage me. But my first semester, all of the classes were mixed together in the dorms, and 95% of women live on campus at Wellesley. So you're really like all kind of living together all 4 years. And I had this amazing upper class woman who lived across the hall from me. And she just told me, your first 3 semesters take 12 completely different classes. Like just use this time to really explore what it is that you are interested in and what gets you excited. And that was amazing for me to hear because like I had done it. Like I was finally in college. Sorry, my parents' landline is ringing.
It's okay.
I did it. Like I was in college. I got to the college I wanted to go to. And now was actually the time to like figure out what am I going to do? It had always been like achieve the next thing, but it was all to get to college. And then we were there. And now the whole point was go explore and just learn and figure out what it is that is interesting to you. So I took like 12 completely different classes. I took like environmental science, I took math, I took physics, I took history. And I really, really loved the like intellectual rigor and challenge of physics and math. I started out as a math major. I ended up changing to a physics major. And the reason why is because at the end of my first semester, we kind of finished our coursework and like our, 101 class. I had taken AP physics in high school. So I was like on that track in college. And my professor wrote an equation on the board on the last day of class. And he said, if you are interested in what this is and you want to learn more about how to solve equations like this, you should take my class next semester. And I had never been so curious about something in my entire life. Like I just needed to understand what that problem was and kind of, I guess, know or prove to myself that I could learn that and be able to solve something like that myself. So it ended up being Schrodinger's equation. And I obviously was able to solve it because I majored in physics. So that's like an important piece. But it was so kind of eye-opening to me to just say, like, just keep going and keep following things that you're interested in and curious about and just see where you end up and see where it leads you.
Yeah. Alex, I'm so curious if you've thought about this because it's fascinating to me that being surrounded by other women maybe gave you that confidence to say like, okay, yeah, I could do physics. Like I love it. And I want to learn this equation. Whereas do you think if you were at another school, co-ed school, where, oftentimes the technical fields, the STEM fields, as we know, are more skewed towards guys, Have you ever thought about that, reflected, and like, would you have chosen the same path?
100%. I do not think I would have had, I don't think I would have studied physics and math, not because I couldn't have. Obviously, I could, but I don't think I would have had the confidence to keep going. Like, that makes me really sad to say. And I wish it wasn't true, but I think it is true that I don't think I would have felt as confident in a class that was co-ed. And I kind of had that experience in high school. Like, I was in a co-ed AP physics class and I didn't feel very confident, or I didn't feel like, this is definitely something that I can pursue. So that was an element, of course. And our professors were extremely encouraging of us and, always made us feel like we could do anything we wanted to. And I will say that actually the person who encouraged me to pursue physics the most was my dad. My dad is very, very intellectually curious, very academic. And he was the one who really pushed me to push myself to study science and math and really kind of explore that.
I love it. I love it. It's so interesting to me to think about, even having that exposure around you gives you that confidence. And then it's almost like, okay, now how can we rewire brains to maintain that confidence in different environments, which we'll get to. But from my understanding, many people went to graduate school and pursued a PhD. So how did you almost say, like, okay, that's not the path for me, and instead I'll go down the finance investment banking route?
Yes. Well, so yeah, we had 7 physics majors in my class, and 6 of them went on to pursue PhDs. I was the only one who decided not to go to grad school. I think part of the reason why I was interested in studying physics and math was the quantitative element, this kind of like curiosity and intellectual rigor that came with studying science and math. But I never wanted to do that full time. Like, whenever we had lab or whenever we had summer internships, I wasn't doing research. I wasn't wanting to be in the lab. That wasn't really something that I was interested in. I really always wanted to be in business or work, for a company or a product that I really cared about. And I had an internship at Google my sophomore year where I was among, similar people who were like studying science, studying math, studying econ. And that was my first exposure to see, oh, I can study these kinds of topics and subjects. And even though it isn't directly applicable to the work, I'm able to use my skills and my critical thinking skills. And that's so much of what you learn at a liberal arts college anyway. I was able to just operate in that environment, no matter what subject I studied, but it helped that I was in such a quantitative field and could apply those skills more broadly. And that's really what I ended up being like most interested in doing after school.
So that internship at Google probably was your first taste of what tech looks like. But then did you go into investment banking with that in mind, saying, okay, I'll be here for a short stint and then I'll go back to tech and, get my hands dirty in that regard?
Yeah, I did want to. So what happened was I got an internship at Google, and it was part of this like bold program for like, young people, sophomores and juniors who wanted to be kind of leaders in tech or grow in tech. It's an amazing internship program. I made incredible friends. I had such a fun time. But I was kind of surprised because we each got placed in like a team and a sector and a kind of a different vertical within the organization. And I was placed on the people operations team, POPs, which is the equivalent of HR at Google. There's absolutely nothing wrong with HR. I know a lot of people who are incredible, HR colleagues and pursue that line of work, but that wasn't necessarily the line of work that I wanted to pursue. And I felt like I was studying physics and math. I wanted to be in maybe a more, rigorous field, maybe more tech, maybe ad tech, maybe sales, something that kind of could use those skills and could apply them more broadly. And I got a little bit nervous, I guess, being placed in that department and thinking, ooh, okay, now I'm coming from like a liberal arts school. I'm trying to get into tech. I'm not really sure if I can compete with the people that are at also very good schools and that are studying these kinds of, and majoring in these kinds of fields, maybe I need to go kind of get this crash course in finance and business and then come back and pursue what is right for me. So that's actually ultimately why I decided to go into banking. I kind of realized I need this stepping stone and this like crash course in business that I can't get from a liberal arts school. You can study econ, but I was already very much down the physics and math course. And so I ended up pursuing investment banking in TMT, technology, media, and telecom, stayed there for 2 years as an analyst, and then found my way back into tech once I had that skill set and kind of built up that groundwork.
So take me through a bit the challenges or at least friction points that you experienced in investment banking, obviously in this male-dominated environment. And I think it actually applies for any young professional coming from college. Maybe you had a little bit more of a adjustment shift because you came from Wellesley and in that all-girls school. But how was that experience for you? What was almost that hardest moment, if you will?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think there were two elements that were most challenging for me. The first element was like, I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier where I kind of mentioned like Wellesley is a little bit of an artificial environment. Like it's not really the real world. In the real world, you're with co-ed, you're in a co-ed environment, you're with people of different genders and sexes. And it was this kind of like isolating moment in time where you could just really focus on school and friends and girls and wear sweatpants all the time. And we never wore makeup and we went to class in our pajamas. Like, we took care of ourselves, but it was very relaxed. And I think that like switch back into the real world, so to say, where I was so much able to focus on myself, my studies, my friends, that's it. Adding those additional layers of like, how do I want to present myself in a business setting? What do I wear? How do I do my hair? Like, how do I want what's my like brand and professional personality? Before that, it was almost like singular. There's like a singular focus. You didn't have so much of that those other things to worry about, which in some ways are, as important or, they are still of importance. And at Wellesley, it was so much the only thing that matters. At least this was my personal experience and the way that I kind of went through college. The only thing that matters is my studies and my school and, my relationships. I kind of let these I like forgot or didn't build these other kinds of pieces. Even small things like how to live life, like how to get toilet paper or order dinner or make dinner. Like, I didn't have that in college. I was just so singularly focused on one thing.
Yeah, just honestly, just the adjustment of being an adult, right? And just having that shift of being like, everything is at my fingertips. I have a cafeteria. I have everything in one place. I have friends. And then it's like, okay, we're all spread out. And it's like, how do I learn this? So just that adjustment shift is
exactly. And then I think the other thing, like the second thing I would say is that confidence piece. Like your question on, would you have studied physics and math otherwise? Like I remember a very, very distinct example when I was in banking and I went it was me and my VP and we were in our MD's office. We were in the middle of a really complicated deal where things kept moving every 2 weeks. Every holiday we were working. And the latest kind of update was our client was putting out a bear hug letter. And I didn't know what a bear hug letter was. I studied physics at a liberal arts school. And so I was kind of just like, sitting in her office, taking my notes, and my VP was there also taking notes. She was giving us a digest and we were going to kind of go back to our desks, regroup, rerun the model, reprint the deck. And at the end of the meeting, she said to me, okay, Alex, what's a bear hug? And I was like, I have no idea. I mean, I had truly no idea what a bear hug was. Obviously, I know what it is now, but I kind of lost that confidence for a sec. Like in college, I would have just raised my hand and asked the question right away.
Right.
But entering banking, I didn't really know, like, am I supposed to speak up? Am I supposed to be authoritative? We were so encouraged to do that in college. Am I supposed to ask the question or am I supposed to really just pretend like I know what's going on here, or look it up later, or go with the flow and not interrupt and only say something when I have something to say. Like I was trying to figure out kind of where that confidence was or what my style was, when to speak up, when not to. And that was a big adjustment. And I think especially being among men, again, in that environment where like among women, you know, it was so warm and welcoming. Not to say it's not with men in the room, but it was just an adjustment. And that like her question just pierced me and has really, really stuck with me. And she said, don't ever leave my office if you don't know what's going on. I want you to ask the question. And she really, really encouraged me, and she was amazing. But that was a really kind of like striking experience for me.
I love it. I love it. And I've heard many similar stories in that regard, where even I had one person on the show, and she was saying how she went into a room, she didn't speak up, and her boss was like, the next time you don't speak up in a meeting, you're fired. Like, you're hired here to have an opinion and speak your opinion. So I think it's amazing. And so looking back now, what advice, I guess, would you give someone who is in that situation, who's early on in their career, feels small in a room with, you know, people who everyone acts like they know what's going on in a sense, and you don't want to be that one to ask, even though maybe some people are also asking the same question. But how would you look back now at it, and how would you, what would you tell others?
I think I would say there's always a balance, obviously. You want to be well-researched, you want to be well-read, you want to be prepared, but you're not going to know everything. And be okay with not knowing everything. And don't ask every single question, but definitely ask the question. When you need information, or you're curious, or you want to learn, and you want to understand, and you need this information to do a better job, raise your hand and ask. Because if you don't ask, you're the one who's going to be left behind. Then I was going to have to be at my desk Googling on Investopedia what a bear hug is, when I could have gotten the best explanation from my MD, who had the context of the deal, who had the context of my work and my experience and my learning. So I would say do both of those things, right? Like, be well-read, be well-researched, do your own studying, but then also ask the question. And you know, keep in mind, you want to, you know, my dad always says this to me. My dad always says, like, you want to be the person that when you have something to say, people listen. So you're not always speaking for the sake of speaking, or always asking the question for the sake of asking the question. And I've definitely over-indexed on that side, where I've like really asked every single question that's ever popped into my head. So I would say, ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question. And then always just maintain that balance of like asking the question and, you know, and doing that kind of work in your own time as well.
And did you have a mentor or someone that you looked up to and felt comfortable to, maybe after the meeting, you go up to them and say, okay, I didn't understand what a bear hug is. Like, can you explain it to me? Or is it more, you know, just having that confidence to whoever's in the room speaking up?
I have had so many mentors, and I've had so many people in my career that have been such like forces and rocks for me in each job I've been in. Yeah. I think it's both. I think it's definitely like with those relationships, with those mentors, ask the question and have the conversation. And if you're in the room and you're not sure what's happening, and, you know, read the room, obviously, but don't be afraid to ask there as well. That also might be where you find your mentor. You know, maybe there's someone in that room who loves your, you know, curiosity and your passion, and that person answers your question, and you guys strike up a conversation after the meeting. So I think, don't be afraid to ask the question, read the room, do your research, but, you know, be involved, be part of it, and don't minimize yourself. You know, don't make yourself small. Like, you know, be present, be part of it, and put yourself in that position that you're also, you know, one of this group of people who's working and leading this work and this project that's happening here.
Amazing. I love it. So at this point, obviously, take me through the opportunity where Netflix came up. I believe Netflix was your next, you know, next role. And this was almost the transition to real media, or at least media and streaming in a different way. At what stage was Netflix at this point? And then also, what were you thinking of? What were you optimizing for at this point in your career that said, okay, this is the time?
Well, I have to say, I was so extremely lucky because a recruiter from Netflix reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Amazing.
So that is just like right place, right time. And my mom always encouraged me in college, like study something quantitative. Those skills will always apply in every single job. And that's what it was. Like at Netflix, they were looking for people who had consulting and banking experience. And I had banking experience and worked in this like TMT space. So I was just extremely lucky. I would have also applied for the job, but I was very lucky that someone reached out to me. I was at the time looking for a job exactly like that. I was working on a transaction with two telecom companies, and I was writing the debt memo. Like we were underwriting their debt. And it was my job to argue why this deal would be the best thing for the customer. And so, I'm using all the business jargon. I'm using all the right terms. We're putting together a solid case where this is the best thing for the customer. And that's why underwriting this deal makes sense. And in the meantime, I'm realizing I've actually never had cable myself. I'm a cord never, and I can't even get these companies on the phone to come to my apartment to hook this up, that I gave up and just was using Netflix myself. And that was the first time when I realized, oh wait, I am the customer. This isn't some like hypothetical thing. This is just all of us living our lives, consuming products and buying products and choosing which brands to use and purchase. So that was the first time that I realized, okay, I need to go find a brand and a product that I actually use every day and that I really, really love and want to work for. So that kind of started that next transition from banking to this is where I want to now apply these skills. And Netflix definitely would have been the place that I applied, and that I just so happened to be so lucky that someone reached out to me. And, I was living in New York at the time. I had only ever been on the East Coast besides my internship at Google. I grew up in New Jersey, went to school in Boston, worked in New York, and I thought I was just going to live and die in New York. I was living with my sister at the time. We were having so much fun. And the job was in LA. They asked me to come I interviewed, I got the job all while I was in New York. And I said, listen, I need to come to LA and see what this city is about. I've never even been there.
Yeah.
So I flew out, I saw the office, I met the team, and it was like a dream. I couldn't even believe you could like work and live among palm trees. It was so wild to me that this could be my life. It was so exciting. And I accepted that day. And I moved a couple weeks later and I started working at Netflix in 2015. So at the time, it was really small. There were a handful of original shows. They were just starting to really like pivot into original content. There were 2,000 people at the company in total, 350 in the LA office alone. And it was such a magical time to be there. And I'm really, really lucky that that all kind of like aligned and happened at the same time. I mean, I know I worked hard too, but it was also luck.
Yeah. No, there's so much serendipity in it that I love. And I've talked about serendipity as a concept even on this show before. And I love that. And you took it and you never looked back in a way. And then by the way, did you know anyone moving to LA, or was it just, you yourself and the company essentially?
No, it was just me. I mean, I had a friend of a friend that I had been put in touch with, who also actually happened to work at Netflix, who's now married to one of my best friends. I introduced them and I signed their ketubah at their wedding a couple years ago. But, it was like a friend of a friend that was one person. And then other than that, I just really moved by myself. And it was really hard to leave my family. My whole family is on the East Coast. And I just thought, I'll go try this. I'll see what it's like. I'll see if I like it. If I hate it, I can move back. But I'm going to go like put everything I have into this next opportunity and starting to build my career.
Yeah, that's incredible. And one thing about Netflix that many people, when they hear the word Netflix, probably the next word, if you're in tech is culture, and how amazing the culture is there. There's a playbook. It's a public playbook. Tell me about your experience seeing this culture and almost what you took away from it, saying like, however the leader that I'm going to be, whatever field it may be now at Perelel, What did you take most from the culture at Netflix?
Netflix is hands down one of the best, if not the best companies to work at. It is truly unbelievable what they have built and how they have scaled it. And now having worked at so many different places, and I love my job at Perelel. So that's nothing about Perelel. We only have 12 people. So it's just a different environment.
Yeah.
Having worked at a few other places now, it's so rare and special what they've built. And it really all comes from the top. So that's like my biggest number one lesson about culture is that culture is just every single decision everyone makes every single day. But
Right.
We're all modeling something and we're all looking at how decisions are being made or how leadership is doing things. And so it has to come from the top. And so Reed Hastings, the CEO, set the culture just by how his brain works, by the decisions he made, by how he operated, by his presence and how he ran the company. And we all kind of learned from him and mimicked that. And that's really what kind of flowed through. So that, I guess, was one of my biggest lessons, is that the culture is set at the top. And then I think the second lesson, and this is one thing that one of my mentors from Netflix, who I went to Quibi with, his name is Juan Bongiovanni. He always says, and this came from Netflix, feedback is a gift. And in the beginning at Netflix, you're getting a lot of feedback. You're given live feedback. You're given feedback after a meeting. You're given feedback in a review. And it can be like a little bit daunting in the beginning. You're especially like the people they hire, we're type A. We take a lot of pride in our work and in our jobs, and we're trying to learn and do the best we can. And you're getting feedback to make you better. And sometimes it's someone's opinion, but and that's what feedback is. But a lot of times most of the time it's a very well-informed, well-intended note. And to like change my perception of feedback is a gift, and actually as much feedback as I can get, the better I'll be, the better work I'll do, the better off everyone will be. That like kind of change in my mentality really helped and made it, and that's something I've carried through in every job I've had and kind of throughout my career.
And is this, okay, I can go in a couple different directions, but we can have a whole conversation about culture.
I know.
But even more so, you mentioned culture starts at the top. And Reed Hastings, as a CEO, was it the type of leadership where, everyone from an intern to a VP is in the room and he knows each person? Because I've heard that regard. Or is it more just, making sure everyone knows the values that Netflix embodies and making sure that trails down? What do you really mean by him being a CEO and starting from there?
Well, so I was only like a manager and a senior manager, and I was based in LA. Most of the time, Reed was in Los Gatos, our headquarters, and he traveled around a lot.
Got it.
So I didn't interact with him like personally so much at all hands and things like that. I think it's the latter of what you said. It's like his values and the way that he makes decisions, like the way he steered the company, the way he made hard, difficult decisions, the way that we chose where to invest or where not to invest or how to change the organizational structure. It was like always making the difficult decision, and always, being honest about and being analytical about what's happening and what's really moving the needle and what's really driving the business, and asking the question and getting the answer, and like continuing to kind of push and iterate and optimize. It was more of that, I guess, which is what I took away from it, is this like, just the values and the way that he made decisions and how that trickled down. And, so I can't speak so much to like how he was in meetings or how he knew everyone's name or not, but it was just like having that kind of aspirational, inspirational leader who was really involved in the business and the details of the business every single day.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's incredible. So walk me through now the Quibi story. Obviously, I have some background, and shout out to Steven Greitzer. He actually introduced us, and you guys worked together at Quibi. But walk me through that story, the craziness, what drew you to it and said, okay, I'm going on this rocket ship, and then what ultimately happened.
Yeah. So great question. And yes, hi, Steven. Shout out to Steven. I had been at Netflix for 4 years by the time Quibi started had raised money and was starting to make some noise. And it was a really, really exciting proposition. I really loved when I had first joined Netflix and there were 350 people in the LA office. And it was a really small group and everyone knew everyone. And we were all working on the same things. And I really liked that small environment. Right. And by the time I left, there were 2,500 people in LA alone and 5,000 or 6,000 around the world. And it had scaled to just be a different kind of company that was also extremely exciting. But at my age and that point in my career, I was looking for something a little bit kind of smaller and more startup-like. And my mentor, who I had mentioned earlier, Juan, he actually was the first to move and became the head of growth marketing at Quibi. And he would have been one of the first, 20 or 30 people there. And he then brought Olivia Corey, a colleague and friend of mine in Stevens, and she was his first hire on the marketing side. And I really, really was excited about the opportunity to work with both of them again. And I was really excited about the opportunity to work at a startup. Saying startup is hard to say because I'm now truly at a startup, and a company with $1.75 billion of funding is hardly scrappy, but it was a new endeavor and a new venture. So in that regard, it was a startup. And so those two things aligned, and I interviewed with the woman who would be my boss, Amberine Tubase, and that sealed the deal for me. This is, again, a mentor of mine and someone I'm extremely inspired by and really look up to. And the opportunity to work on her team was what I wanted to do next. And so these kind of three things aligned, and I ended up, giving my notice at Netflix, which was really sad, and moving over to Quibi. When we ended up, by the time we shut down, there were maybe 250 or 300 employees. And when I first joined, there were maybe 50. So we were kind of really at the beginning, starting to build and scale the whole thing back in 2019.
And one overarching theme from that, and also from even Netflix and whatnot, is almost guiding yourself by the people, following the people, the mentors, the people that you looked up to. Olivia, which by the way, she'll be a future guest on She Leads. I've already talked to her. But really, I think that's so special. And I hear that a lot. I think that's a really important tenet to actually carry with you throughout your career. And it seems like that's very much relevant to you, is just following the people that you are going to learn from.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you find people like that you want to work with and that you work well with and that you're excited to learn from and work with, it's very hard to let those people go. You want to move with them and stick with them and learn from them. And, it doesn't mean don't look at other opportunities, but that for me has been a really meaningful, satisfying part of the roles that I've had have been working with people that I really admire and look up to and learn from.
So, okay, take me a little bit through that experience, approaching 2 years, I believe, just according to LinkedIn and whatnot. But when Quibi was almost reaching its demise and people knew that, what was that environment like when kind of shit hit the fan, if you will?
Yeah, so that maybe would have been end of the summer of 2020 or fall 2020. And we were at the time, COVID had been around then for 6 months. We were all working from home. We had only been in the office together, at most a year and a half. At least some people had been there for a couple of days before we went to work from home. It was really, really hard. We were in a very unique position as a company. So sorry, I'll take a step back. It was hard for two reasons. One, it was hard just mentally, because of the environment everyone was in during COVID. And we had lost that like camaraderie, like that special sauce that makes a startup so fun, of like eating lunch together and doing pranks on each other and staying at the office super late. Like that went away when we started working from home. Yes, you can chat on Slack all day long, but that like special sauce was gone. And so then mentally that was really hard, because now you're just pulling 15, 18-hour days by yourself in a room.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing that was really, really challenging is that because of the amount of money we raised, we had such massive expectations and goals. And when we didn't meet those goals right off the bat, there kind of became like two minds within the organization. One was, well, we're never going to be able to achieve this. Like this is impossible unless we really change something, change the like amount of investment, or change the amount of marketing, or change the product, like really make big changes. And that those things will take time. And do we have the time? And the second mindset was, well, this is what we always expected. Like, now we've launched and this is day one, and let's roll up our sleeves and get started. And this is where the real work begins, of like every single day testing and tinkering and studying and analyzing and optimizing and making some big changes, but some small changes, and we'll go and grow from there.
Right.
And we just didn't have the structure with the way we raised money to do that second option of like take our time quickly, but like, test and optimize to get there. And so, there were like so many meetings and so many analyses and so many things, but ultimately, it's the decision of the board and the leadership team of what to do. And we were all, in a way you kind of see it coming. Like we saw the numbers every day. We knew what was happening. I don't think we thought it would be just immediately shut down in the way that it was. But it was an amazing experience. I don't regret it at all. But it was really, really hard towards the end. I think like, mentally and work-wise and all of that.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask that specifically, right? Because you were head of growth strategy. So obviously that was your role, is saying, how do we get out there? How do we grow? How do we accomplish what a startup needs to accomplish at this early stage, especially with investors down your back saying, we've given you all this money. So take me through like your specific mental health, if you will, or the pressure you felt and how you kind of overcame that or learned from it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we were doing, as many things as we could. Like we had launched a test in Australia to begin to test, a freemium plan. We were testing new pricing and packaging. Our product team was testing new sign-up flow. We were playing around with our marketing strategy and our marketing mix. But we had a lot of investors. We had an incredible founder and CEO who we were very, very lucky to have, who also had their own, opinions on what we should be doing to grow. And so I think we were doing as much as we could. But that was, for me, I guess, a lesson in how to work on the ground, like optimizing every day. Like we were doing all the right stuff, testing and trying different tactics. And then there's also like bigger factors at play that you don't always have control over. And so like understanding those factors or working within the context or within the situation that you're handed, that's, you can try to influence as much as you can, but ultimately, and that's what it is working with founders. We're working within a given situation and environment and, doing the best we can. So
it's almost just the messiness that comes with the startup. It's right. Like you can do everything, you can test a bunch, but at the end of the day, it's just how is it respond? How are people responding to it? And and it can kind of go completely different than what you anticipated.
Exactly.
It's working through that. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so obviously after that, you worked at Spotify, you consulted for Walt Disney Company, these incredible big name companies. And then now you're at Perelel, which, as you said, 12-person startup. One thing I'm curious about, and you mentioned this with Quibi, where, COVID hit, all went remote, and you lose that secret sauce in a startup, which for me, it's pretty fascinating, right? When you have these early founders, it's almost like double click on that importance of being all together in one room. So going back to the startup, world and the messiness in that, what drew you to Perelel? And even more so, would you have joined a startup if it was fully remote?
That's a great question. And actually, I am remote. So that's a really good question. But we definitely value that in-person time. And there's only 2 of us who are remote, and we work really hard to make that work in meetings and Slack and calls and things like that. And I go to LA as often as I can. Yeah, it's a really, really incredible, special time to be at a startup, and especially to be at this startup. Our co-founders, Victoria Joya and Alex Taylor, founded this company during the pandemic. They were both pregnant, and they both got this company off the ground, the 2 of them, during the pandemic. It is such an incredible feat that they were able to accomplish. And so we're now just trying to carry on the work that they started. And we're so grateful that we have an office now, and we're able to, get together when we can and work on Slack. But it's almost the opposite of Quibi, where Quibi started in the office and went remote. They actually started in COVID, but they were working in an office. And now we've kind of scaled. And as we've scaled with the remnants of the pandemic, some people are remote, some people are in different places. And we try to get to the office. Everyone tries to get to the office when they can and as much as they can. And that is an important piece of bringing things together and making sure there's, cohesion and culture on the team now.
I love it. And before we get to more fun questions, I do have to ask, now you're Vice President of Growth and E-commerce at Perelel. And I'm curious if you had that almost jump in management or in leadership there was almost that imposter syndrome like we hear all the time. How has that experience been where you had to almost maybe take on a bigger hat and a bigger leadership role in that transition?
I have very serious imposter syndrome every single day. And especially because this is a little bit of a new role for me, and it's a new kind of company for me. It's a smaller company. Smallest company I've been at. It's a new space for me in women's health, and women's healthcare and vitamins and supplements. And so I think the most important thing, I guess, is to, I guess it's stay true to myself. And my partner actually says this to me all the time. He's like, you need to back yourself. It's have the confidence to know you're going to be able to figure it out and do the work and do the research and do the analysis, even if you don't have the answer immediately. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to get through it together. And, our co-founders are so amazing at telling me, we're going to make mistakes. It's okay, but we're going to work through them together, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to get through it. And I think it's that, it's the passion, it's the curiosity, and it's also the pride in the work. I want this, we all want this company to be successful. We care so deeply about this mission to create a world with more healthy, supported women, that every single thing we do, it's putting so much thought and care and pride into the work and how this is kind of being carried out and coming alive. And I think, yes, I do not have all the answers, and I'm definitely going to make mistakes, but I will work my ass off, and I will have so much, thought and pride and consideration in what I'm putting forward, that it won't be right the first time, but together we're going to get it there. And we all have that same goal in mind.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I just got chills from that. I really love it. Okay, Alex, I want to know, what is your superpower?
Oh my gosh. I think my superpower is empathy. I'm not always
Great one.
Amazing at it, but I think it's this common, it's empathy. And that really comes from my childhood and my upbringing and being able to put myself in other people's shoes.
Yeah, that's a great one. What is your most contrarian but high conviction opinion?
Okay, thank you for sending some of these questions in advance, because I've been thinking about this for a really, really long time.
Okay, good.
So I think mine is not everything can be measured. I'm a physics and math major, and like I'm supposed to think that every single thing can be measured.
Right.
But working at Perelel, we're building a brand that understands women and has empathy for women. And that cannot be measured. How women feel when they come to our website, or when they feel seen, or when they feel taken care of through the thought and care we're putting into our products. It can show up in the sales numbers, and it will ultimately over time. But you can't measure every single thing about a business or a feeling or a, desire or a wish. So I think a lot of things can be measured, and there's a lot of like testing and analysis, and we should do all of that always, but not I don't think every single thing that's important to a business or growing a business can be measured.
And how do you think you build empathy? Because it's a very hard thing. And I like to believe that you can learn it and become better at it, but it also seems like it's a very natural thing, even from a young age, maybe. So how do you think that are possible steps to really grow and become more empathetic?
As an individual? Like as a person?
As an individual, yes. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm lucky that I was able to build empathy because my dad has mental illness. So I had to build that skill because I had to, it was the only way that I could understand him and understand our relationship. But I think, and especially in today's world, I guess, I don't know, with social media, you see everyone's lives, you see what they put out. Like, I think maybe the most important thing is like, remember that everyone has a story, and your like interpretation of someone, or what you're getting from someone, or the energy someone else is putting out there, it might not always be like who that person really is or what's really going on. And so to kind of, and we only are like our relationships with each other. Like that's all we have. So yeah, I guess I would say like that's one thing that's been really important for me in building empathy with other people is like, just remember that it's not surface level. We are of multitudes. Everyone has a story. There's something deeper going on. And the more we can like remember we're all human and understand each other, maybe that email was short. Maybe that Slack was short. Maybe, I do that too. Try to put yourself in that person's shoes and remember that person is going through something or has their own day and story and things going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. And it's like you said, that little reminder maybe that we have to take that one extra second to be like, okay, we don't know what's underlying it, and we'll never know, but it's almost just recognizing that, which I think is so important. I love that.
Exactly.
So Alex, one more question, which by the way, this is so from Steven. I obviously talked to him a little bit, and he said, I see her as a very real presidential candidate one day. Given your just absolute level of hard work, your analytical mind, I can kind of go on, and I think it's very clear from this episode. So I have to ask, is that a real future? Where do you see where do you want to be when you grow up in a way?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm humbled. Never say never. I will say I spent some time living in Singapore during the pandemic, and that was very shocking for me, seeing like the difference in how that society is run versus how things are run in America. And for the first time ever, like I kind of had culture shock coming back to America with the airport and the crime so I don't know, never say never. Who knows where our paths will lead us. President, that feels like a stretch for me. And who knows what you're going to find when you go through my Facebook profile from 2004. But I don't know, being involved in like helping to shape our society. Yeah, that sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, incredible. I love it. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much from you. So really, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. What a privilege to be here and be a guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the show this week. If you enjoyed, please spread the word. Tell someone about She Leads or post about it on social media and tag us. If you want to contact us, feel free to send over a message through the She Leads Instagram page at sheleads.show. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our account is @SheLeadsShow, and mine is @Carly Malatsky. This episode was produced and edited by Nick Verschow. Thank you also to our partner, Floodgate. If you're passionate about startups and want to learn more about the starting journey of those who have built groundbreaking companies, I highly recommend listening to Starting Greatness with Mike Maples Jr., the founding partner of Floodgate. He has an incredible show that, in my opinion, is definitely worth your time. Thanks again.